Embark on a global storytelling adventure with Stories World, a channel weaving tales from around the world. Explore diverse narratives, fables, and historical accounts that transcend borders. Subscribe for a journey through the rich tapestry of human stories. History from Indonesia tells the story of a disobedient child named Malin Kundang to his mother, so he was cursed by his mother to become a stone. Once upon a time, in a fishing village in Air Manis, West Sumatra, there lived a family of fishermen. Due to the family's financial needs, the father finally decided to migrate across the ocean. However, the father never returned to the village and left his wife. The wife then raised their son, Malin, by herself. By his mother, Malin was often invited, taken anywhere. Therefore, the child got a new nickname, Malin Kundang. Malin grew up as a smart boy, but was a little mischievous. Malin often chases chickens and hits them with a broom. One day, when Malin was chasing a chicken, Malin fell and hit his hand on a rock. The wound left a mark on his arm. Growing up, Malin felt sorry for his mother, who had to struggle to provide for them, so he intended to migrate with a merchant ship. When she told Malin about her intentions, her mother did not allow her to go. Mande's mother was not willing to leave her only child behind. She was also afraid that Malin would become like his father, who left and never returned to the village. Despite his mother's refusal, Malin did not stop persuading her. Seeing Malin's persistence, Mrs. Mande allowed him to leave, although with a heavy heart. After assuring his mother that he would be fine, Malin said goodbye and left Mrs. Mande alone in the village. While sailing on his journey, a bad incident befell his ship, and he was stranded on a beach. Malin was stranded in a seaside village and was unconscious. The villagers at the beach welcomed and helped Malin to live and work there. Malin worked diligently to cultivate the village's fertile land and became increasingly successful. Malin had 100 workers and a number of merchant ships of his own. After becoming a rich man, Malin married the daughter of a wealthy merchant and made the wedding party in his village very lively. Meanwhile, Mrs. Mande never received any news from Malin after his departure. For years, Mrs. Mande could only stare at the sea while praying that her son would survive and send news or even return to the village. Whenever a large ship docked in the village, Mrs. Mande always asked the skipper and crew about her son. However, no one ever brought news or messages from Malin. Once upon a time, Malin, his wife, and several crew members went sailing on a large ship. After sailing for a while, the ship anchored on an island. Without realizing it, it turned out to be Malin's hometown. Seeing the large ship anchored, the villagers, including Mrs. Mande, gathered on the beach. They wanted to welcome the ship, which they thought belonged to a sultan or prince. From a distance, a young man and woman were seen standing on the platform, wearing luxurious clothes. Ibu Mande saw and realized that the young man was Malin. As soon as the ship docked and the two young men got off the ship, Ibu Mande ran to her son. Up close, Ibu Mande saw the scars on the young man's arms and became convinced that he was Malin. She then hugged Malin, calling his name and asking how he was doing. Malin's wife, who was standing near Malin, was surprised to see an old woman dressed in rags hugging her husband while claiming to be his mother. Understandably, all this time, Malin had claimed that his parents were nobles and had died. Malin's wife also asked Malin about who the woman really was. Ashamed of his wife, Malin then pushed his mother and spoke harshly to Mrs. Mande. Malin did not acknowledge her as a mother, and said that her mother was not like Mrs. Mande, who was dirty and poor. After that, Malin ordered his wife and men to hurry back to the ship to set sail. Mrs. Mande, who was an old woman, lay on the sand, crying and hurt until she fainted. After finally waking up, Ibu Mande lived alone on the beach, and the villagers who had been crowded had left her. Mrs. Mande also saw that Malin and his wife's ship had sailed away from the shore. Crying, she knelt down and raised her hands to pray to God. Ibu Mande prayed that if the young man was not Malin Kundang, Ibu Mande would forgive him. But if the young man was really Malin Kundang, then Ibu Mande cursed him to become a stone. After Mrs. Mande prayed, the sky that had been bright suddenly turned dark. Heavy rain and storms appeared. Malin's sailing ship was smashed to pieces by lightning. The next day, when the storm had subsided, the wreckage of the ship that had turned to stone was swept by the waves to an island. Among the debris that washed up on the shore, there was one boulder shaped like a bowed human body, with anchovies, mullet, and mackerel swimming in between. The local people believe that the stone is the body of Malin, who was cursed to turn into stone for disobeying his mother, and the fish around it are fragments of the body of Malin's wife, who is looking for her husband.